Hi there, and welcome to Side Quest, the other weekly podcast we do when we're not adventuring. When we like to talk about movies or video games, or talk to an interesting guest, or just ramble. Today we've got with us myself, Steve Weverill, and Drew Hayes, and Rick Waltieri, and Robert Bevan. Say hello, everyone.
Salutations!
Which of us is the interesting guest?
Yeah, you may have. There are no interesting guests today. There's just us. But you know, it's coming up to summer, and we were chatting about all the things we miss from the world before the Rona took hold and severely disrupted, at the very least, the lives of many. And of all the kind of, there's some obvious, very real world fallout for a lot of people, but there's been sort of kind of social changes as well, which are quite interesting. And one thing I used to look forward to in the summer months was the deluge of summer blockbuster crap hitting the cinemas.
Well, Steve, let me ask the question. Do you guys celebrate like different months than we here do in the States? Because it's almost August, which means we're well past coming into summer.
Yeah, but I forgot to talk about it last month, so we're still in summer.
Look, quarantine time makes everything a little bit shaky. Timey-wimey, wimbly-wobbly, etc.
Who knows what fucking month it is?
I thought, what's interesting about August? And I thought, what's been interesting about anything this year? I don't fucking know what the difference is anymore. But that has been notably different. It's obviously the closure of cinemas. It's not really an environment conducive to social distancing at all. Not typically clean, usually a bit sticky. Hives of disease, basically, now that I think about it. So quite rightfully closed, but this has done a fucking number on the usual movie schedule we've all kind of passively swallowed for most of my life. So are we seeing the death of the summer blockbuster?
We might be seeing the death of a lot of theaters in capacity. So Rick brought up why this now. This actually is topical to when we're recording, because we're recording on the day that AMC and Universal have announced their big agreement to do 17-day theater windows, which highlights something that the quarantine threw into stark relief. People like to watch their shit online. And the appeal of a cinema is rapidly diminishing as home setups get better. I mean, even if you don't have like a dedicated media room and projector, most TVs are just big and flat, and they have really nice pictures, and it's not that much of a difference.
Yeah, and they're cheap. I mean, you can go to like a 55-inch TV is like almost nothing these days.
Yeah. I mean, I should point out that when I say the death of the summer blockbuster as we know it, it's not as if everything was fine, then coronavirus came along and it died. It was already facing a lot of challenges. The entire culture of seeing a movie in the cinema was facing a lot of challenges. We were getting to the stage where there wasn't really a lot of variety in what was coming out. People perhaps were spending money on the sure bets and not more on the interesting stuff, and the interesting stuff was going to streaming, which has come along leaps and bounds since the beginning of the golden age of fantastic television, which I think is somewhere between 24 and Breaking Bad. And we've had all these cultural kind of changes, but movies are still very much centered around the idea of a theater release, both financially and I guess spiritually. And now we've just had that forcibly taken away from them. Is it going to disrupt the movie industry? Well, it has disrupted the movie industry, but is it going to force them into a kind of evolution, or just perhaps kill what we understand of summer blockbuster to be?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this is maybe perhaps an exacerbation or an accelerant of problems that were already happening, like Steve said. I mean, so to cap on this sort of the digital versus the theater experience, etc., we have seen AMC, as I'm just going to use them because they're a great case study in this recent news stuff. But like they've been having a lot of trouble. So much so that if anybody remembers a few months ago, and again, quarantine time, no fault if you don't, it's all fucking madness here. But a few months ago, Universal announced how good Trolls World Tour had done when they released it to video on demand. It indicated they might start doing that with some releases. And in response, AMC and Royal Cinema were like, well, then we're not going to show Universal movies. And it was the collective sort of the entire industry going, yeah, but you're on the verge of bankruptcy. Who gives a shit what you think?
It's kind of like Blockbuster saying, we're not going to carry you. Who cares?
Yeah. It's to the point where, look, I think, honestly, the theater industry is in deep, deep trouble in a lot of capacities. The only way I see it not folding completely is, honestly, if Hollywood just shores it up because they like the prestige and the experience.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen because I think Hollywood likes their cash more.
Yeah.
They like prestige a lot. Let's not forget how much of a self-jack-off the Academy Awards are.
Yeah, but you got to remember that all this stuff kind of inflates the idea of value. All that prestige kind of translates into real-world dollars at some stage. If you take that away, I think we've seen this a lot with the internet as well. I'd like to say we're maybe kind of seeing the death of the celebrity as we know it. Because now they're all on fucking Twitter, and surprise, surprise, it turns out they're all assholes just like we are. And it has that kind of prestige and mystique of the celebrity has gone a little bit there. I think it's kind of watered down the currency a little bit.
Well, not only that, but in both cases, I mean, you were talking about problems that were already there, but also, modern times are just providing other alternatives, like Rick was talking about, 55-inch flat screens in your house. I prefer staying home to watch a movie rather than going to movie theater. The only reason I take the kids to see Star Wars when a new movie comes out is because I don't want to seem like a cheap asshole. But also, what you were saying with regard to celebrity, the other side of that coin is that, any fuck can be a celebrity now if they just gain the followers. I mean,
also, I'll offer the Power Ranger model that kind of says celebrities are kind of disposable. Where when the first season of Power Rangers, the first cast, they basically came and said, "Hey, we want more money." Saban could have ponied up, and they probably should have, but instead they said, "Fuck you, you're all fired. We're just going to hire more nobodies who are cheap."
Nobody's buying action figures of you. They're buying action figures of the Power Rangers. Yes, they maybe should have been a little quieter about that.
But there's something to be said about, should celebrities who get $20 million a movie and thus obviously jack up budgets and shit, should that model really be going the way of the dodo, which I would argue it should.
Yeah, perhaps.
I mean, but that'll always be a response to demand. So long as there is money that allows for productions to spend that kind of money and entice that kind of named draw, there'll be people willing to pay it.
Another thing I would say is I don't actually diminish the talent of actors. I think a lot of people say, oh, what, they got paid X amount of million just for acting? A lot of actors are really fucking good. I've read screenplays that are just kind of like, it's a screenplay. It's really the actors and the directors who make it. But that's when you're talking about interesting movies. If you're talking about Captain Spacecock 3 or whatever, it's chances are you're not going to need somebody who can, pull off a Hamlet. It's just, you need a charismatic dude. And Hollywood farms them people out. They've got a whole warehouse full of Chris's somewhere.
Now I really want to see Jeremy Irons in Captain Spacecock.
I don't think I don't think should really comes into play. I mean, I see all the Facebook memes and shit. Oh, these sports stars and actors get paid millions of dollars, but what about our teachers? Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if they got paid more, but I don't begrudge the actors and sports stars because it's they're producing something that a large amount of people are willing to pay money for.
We would probably think it was fucked up if they were making billions of dollars for these companies and they weren't getting a fair slice of it.
Yeah, they're taking a chunk of something at the end of the day.
I guess where I begrudge it is that when it affects me. Like when say, like, I don't give a shit about. I don't shit.
Why
I don't give
am
a
I
shit
not
about,
getting paid billions?
No. I'm saying like I don't give a shit
jokes.
about the Yankees, but I can understand when somebody's like, "Hey, I go there every season, and every season the ticket prices go up because they're paying all their players, like in $20 million piles of cocaine."
Well, that's your choice
Yeah.
whether or not to buy a ticket. I don't.
Yeah, but you got to, again, wonder how sustainable that model is. Again, with Hollywood, they're trying to create these movies that everyone will like, including, people on the other side of the world, and making them accessible as possible. And they've become these enormous, difficult to feed beasts that just take so much money and this infrastructure to hold up, to the point where I guess any interruption to that could be disastrous.
Yeah, I love sitting at home watching a movie, eating popcorn that costs less than $9, and holding my middle fingers high at the movie theaters. Fuck you guys. Munch, munch, munch.
Even if the actors aren't getting screwed, there's plenty of people in the movie food chain who are still getting screwed.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Like, it's a real fucked up industry, and that's without even going into the recent scandals that have come to light in just the past few years. Like, it's a fucking shit show.
The fact that the animation studio that did The Life of Pi basically was bankrupted after The Life of Pi. They got awards for that. Everyone says this is the most innovative technology we've ever seen. No, we're not giving you any money. Fuck you. Circle the drain and die. We'll farm it out to, whoever.
You don't even have to go that far back. The Sonic movie, I think, had the same thing happen. The people who fixed Sonic and made that movie very successful, that fucking studio went under.
And they deserve not just an award, they deserve some kind of Nobel Peace Prize, because they made a Sonic movie that was good. Nobody was expecting that. That's got to be worth some kind of artistic kind of... at the very least, they shouldn't, now go into bankruptcy and obscurity. They should be held on a pedestal somewhere.
But I definitely side with Bob. Like, around here, there's one theater... They've removed all the stadium seating and they put in like recliners and stuff. And it's so much nicer. It's kind of like sitting in your living room, except it's like still like sitting in your living room with overpriced popcorn and people you didn't invite over. And
but here's the thing. The worst thing about them is it's the idea of, there's a technical term for this, but I can't remember what it is, but the idea of false value. They really inflated it. They make these big, pretty buildings, big attractive snack stands, and they do it more so they can charge you for something that you can have cheaper. There's absolutely no reason that a movie in this day and age cannot be released wide on the internet at the same time as it is in the cinemas in every country across the world at the same time. But they won't do that, because if they can charge you more for a controlled experience with this sense of inflated value, it's like there's only 5 movies to choose from in the theater. So I guess we'll see one of those 5. Whereas if they put it to compete with every other movie on the internet, it'd be like, maybe not as special. So all that kind of infrastructure of inflated value and inflated prestige, like Drew said, gone. Will it survive in its current form?
So there's an interesting other sort of trend in more modern theaters. I actually don't go to most theaters if I can possibly avoid it, just because crowds and etc. Even before all this. But there's a chain that I like, and it's because I go so rarely. But they're called iPick, and it's basically, I don't know, maybe 40 people in a theater. Everybody is sectioned off into like these 2-seat pods. They bring you food and drinks like at Alamo Drafthouse. It is still overpriced. Let's be absolutely clear on this. It's inflated value, but at least there's an added value. And I really like that one for when I have to go see like a Marvel movie on opening weekend or something. Just because of my job, I have to engage with that immediately or it's going to be spoiled for me. I don't want to go fucking fight opening night crowds. I'm too old for that shit.
I like that. Because of my job, and I absolutely cannot turn off Twitter.
I mean, no, because I have to go plug shit. That's literally our jobs, Rick.
I've been to Alamo Draft House and I really loved it. I saw Jojo Rabbit there before it kind of got its general promoted release when it was still sort of gathering steam. I loved the experience. I loved the fact that nobody was talking. I loved the fact the place was interested in film and they had all this kind of film trivia before the movie started rather than stupid adverts. But I am a certain type of movie lover and not everyone is like me. And it's kind of like it's a small gig, not a stadium gig. And I wonder how, I don't know, I even wonder how sustainable Art House would be if mainstream theaters failed.
Well, I think like the iPics and the Alamos have a better shot than the AMCs and the Cinemarks because there is something to that experience. Going to Alamo Drafthouse is different than going to the movies. And that, I don't know if that'll be enough, but, you know, it's kind of the same with the iPic. It gives you a unique enough experience that might carry people in.
I would hope so. I do, like I say, I'm something of a movie buff and I do enjoy the theatre experience when it's good. And there's not some teenager in front of me looking at his fucking phone.
What about drive-ins?
Drive-in. Do you guys have drive-ins?
They're kind of making a resurgence.
You know what? I honestly haven't
checked. We don't have them in the UK.
Are they illegal in the UK?
No, we just don't have them. We just watch people fight in car parks.
Oh, we do that too. We definitely do that too.
That's all we got. We get some popcorn. I noticed there was a resurgence in drive-thrus specifically because of Corona, and there was kind of drive-through live events as well, so everybody is kind of handily social distance. I always liked seeing drive-thrus in American movies, but it was never raining in those movies, so I don't think it's a viable option for the UK.
Bullshit.
Buy a pair of wipers.
They don't have rain in the UK.
I'm telling you, man. It's just, when you're not here, it's miserable.
Oh, Steve.
Oh, that's kind of sweet.
You'd have to be sitting there with your engine running. The whole place would just be filled with carbon dioxide fumes and you'd suffocate.
Do you leave your engine on at a drive-in?
No, you'd have to keep warm.
Yeah, kind of the same issue here. There's no way to do a drive-in in Texas unless you can keep your car running, because AC is not optional.
That sounds terrible for the environment.
Yeah, but it's a great way to get heat stroke if you don't.
Yeah. Well, let's take drive-ins off the table. There seems to be, I don't think they're going to save cinema. Let's put it that way.
You're probably right.
Yeah, drive-ins are having their own struggles.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe drive-in for the modern age. Everybody turns up on bicycles like a bunch of fucking Frenchmen. I don't know.
I mean, so there is another bit to add too, and this is a very recent development, I think, for some people, kind of less so for us specifically. In a weird way, we were ahead of the curve on this one. And I do mean us, like this podcast, because it's the ability to add a social component to watching a movie in an online interface, which has not been something widely circulated. So for those who don't know, Authors and Dragons has a Patreon and a Discord. We plug it a lot. I feel like you've probably heard this. But to do more than a simple shill, one of the things we do is Authors and Dragons at the Movies, where we all watch a movie together, talk about it, over it, have fun. Our Patreons watch along. We had to find a system to do that, and we had to seek it out. And the original one we used actually closed and caused a bit of a kerfuffle as we had to hunt around. Now, in the rise of quarantine, Netflix Party became a thing. I think Facebook added some watch-along bit. So the ability to watch movies with your friends, even at a distance, is becoming more ubiquitous and easily accessible. And with that, it's just a real another hammer blow to the theaters.
And it's only a matter of time before somebody comes up with like a VR theater setup.
They have them in VR, things. I've read about VR. Sadly, that one I don't have. But I know they have them.
Okay.
I don't know if they're good. That's the condition with all current VR.
Yes.
I know it exists. Now ask me if it's shitty.
I'm not entirely convinced by the screen share thing. I mean, it's great, but I think if a new movie was coming out, I don't think I'd want to be I'll watch it online with my friends, because the kind of going to the theatre with your buddies is an experience. I think the whole screen share thing's only good if you plan to talk through the movie. And if I'm watching a new movie I actually want to watch, I want everyone to shut up. But I guess what I would expect to happen is if everybody's going to get online to watch a movie, it's going to be a movie they've already seen or a jokey movie. So there might be a resurgence in classics. I mean, we did an At the Movies on Cats the other day. I hate Cats. It's an awful film. I wish it had never been made. But it was hilarious to watch it from the point of view of screen sharing with other people and sharing that weird experience. So I could foresee an environment where screen sharing is more useful for bad movies than it is for good movies, which again is going to change that dynamic. It might kill the blockbuster if people realize they can just make an obnoxious piece of shit that people like to laugh at together. Then that might change the way they make and market movies.
I'll say, one interesting thing for me is that I can get my kids to come with me to a movie theater, but they would sooner skin themselves alive than sit on the couch and watch a movie with me.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, I suppose it is. It's the same with me. When I have my kids over, I'm like, should we watch a movie? They've got their phones next to them and their games console in the other room, and they might start watching it. But if the movie's anything less than completely engrossing, they're probably going to wander off. At least in a theatre, they're forced to spend time with me for like 90 minutes. So.
They're forced to love us.
So there is something else to talk about aside from just, what to do as far as, going to a theater, why you would want to go to a theater. There's another part of this equation that's really crucial right now, and that is, why the hell would you go to a theater right now? There's nothing to see. I mean, the ones that are open are showing old movies from the 80s and whatnot that you can stream in your home. If it's not an experience film a la a Rocky Horror Picture Show where being with the crowd is part of it, and obviously not a good idea in the current circumstances, then and I say that just because Hollywood had to stop churning out movies. Like, they had to stop production. It's not like they're going to turn a faucet and a fully ready amount of content is going to come bursting back.
I'm quite a big fan of kind of movie analysis and review shows, and just watching them kind of sit there and twiddle their thumbs, just reviewing all this kind of Netflix stuff that, never would have counted as cinematic releases before, is quite amusing. But you're right. I mean, it's happened with television as well. They've been really filling in the blanks with some cheap nonsense, and a lot of the more expensive things have just kind of, if they didn't have enough episodes in the bag, or they've exhausted all those episodes, there's going to be a bit of a gap before they can start producing them again.
Oh, definitely.
It's a good day to work in animation.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, yes. Our animators. Bet you those Life of Pi boys are laughing it up now.
We got Crunchyroll here, and we're looking at getting Funimation.
What the hell happened with that? Like, because Funimation was bundled with Crunchyroll, and then it was bundled with Verve, and now they're trying to support their own shit again. What the hell, Funimation?
No fucking idea.
Figure your shit out, man.
A really great time to be reading books, by the way, listeners.
Nerd.
just put that out there.
I hear a new Shingles book is coming out.
By the time they're hearing it, I think it might already be
Thicker Than Blood. Available by the time you're listening to this.
While you're waiting for the Hollywood machine to churn out its turds into your mouth again, why not read the entirety of Shingles and every other book we've written?
Yeah, you could wait for Hollywood to shit in your mouth, or you could read Alien versus Ass.
It's a much quicker way to get shit in your mouth. Anyway, enough of the shilling. You're right. I mean, I know that there were a lot of movies that were scheduled to be released. That doesn't necessarily mean they were finished, but now they're not. And I don't know whether that's a case of they want the theatre release because they've already put the kind of money and marketing into it that would have been understandable when theaters were an option, or if it's that they weren't quite finished and they can't quite get them finished. But I know that theoretically a lot of studios have movies ready to go.
Yeah, that's kind of a good question to ask right now is, do we think that studios are holding back their films because of a fear that they won't get the perceived value out of them? Or we're in the stage of, Steve talked about the summer blockbuster, but these things are so fucking expensive now. Like, Disney's Mulan, I'm sure, cost a shitload. I'm not going to look it up, but I feel pretty confident making that assertion. It cost a shitload of money because it's a Disney blockbuster.
Shitload to do it right.
Yeah.
And it's a prime example of what I was talking about, the flat appeal to everyone blockbuster. It's a proven story. It's got a built-in audience. You spent the right money on getting it to look a certain way.
But that's the thing. Did they spend so much that they have to release it as a blockbuster? Can they not afford to risk it for anything less than full capacity crowds?
I absolutely think so. These things, like I said, the beast has become very expensive to feed. And I'm not just talking about making the movie or getting the actors, but the marketing alone is fucking astronomical. The fact that they put so much into marketing would suggest that they are about packed theaters. And if they can't get packed theaters, it's suddenly, everybody says, oh, these movies make so much money. Yes, but they also cost so much money. And if it goes wrong, fair enough. The guys in suits, you can maybe have to half their cocaine allowance for a couple of months. But a lot of other people are kind of lose their jobs.
But along those same lines, though, sitting and waiting is, when do we think those packed theaters are going to come back? Because there's a couple movies I do want to see, but I like Living a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I want to see Tenet. I do want to see that movie. There is no fucking way I'm going to a movie theater to see it. I will wait. I will wait my happy ass for the download on whatever platform it ends up on.
Yeah, Black Widow and Godzilla vs. King Kong. These are two movies that have my name all over them. And right now, unless you told me the theater is all yours and there are no employees, my answer is hard no.
No, absolutely right. And I don't see them. It's still very unstable over here in Europe. We're not out of the woods yet. A lot of people are talking about the possibility of a second lockdown. There are already kind of localized lockdown. There's no way anyone's going to suddenly say, fuck it, we'll open cinemas. It's just, it's the last thing anyone needs to open.
Florida might.
Yeah. And, we're talking about Hollywood bottom line, so it has to be mentioned. That I believe, at least as of recently, I haven't checked this yet, but China still had their movie theaters either shut down or just were not seeing very much activity from people in them. So their box office is not back to full capacity by any means either. And that's a major thing because, Steve said it well, like they spend so much money on these. They can't just succeed in one market. They have to succeed everywhere to be the kind of hit that keeps that success train flowing.
Mm-hmm. Theoretically, you could just say, well, if it's just about the money, just put it up online, and for a certain amount of time, it costs as much as a movie ticket. But the thing is, you'd pay that, and there might be 5 people in your house. When you went to the theater, you were paying that times 5. Now you're just paying it once, and then maybe your neighbors will come over. I don't know.
There's also the distribution channel, because Disney, they have Disney Plus, they own it. But what's everybody else going to do? Like, have to go through Amazon or Netflix or so?
Yeah. I can't believe Disney hasn't taken this opportunity to just swing that mighty market cock they have and say, fuck it, Black Widow's on Disney Plus. Or if not that, Disney something Plus, to that level. Like, I mean, maybe not one that they need the money back on that bad, but just start throwing shit onto Disney Plus and just crush.
Or what they could do,
get everyone in the habit.
They could put it on Disney Plus. They could throw an extra pay-per-view layer on there. We're saying, here's our normal Disney Plus shit, but this is brand new, so we'll charge you an extra $5 if you watch it.
I think that would go bad. People don't like
probably
subscription, and that'll.
I disagree because here's the thing. For the longest time, we've paid a lot of money for cable, and yet we still have to pay more for on-demand.
I mean, that's a reasonable way of looking at it, Rick, but there are a lot of unreasonable people out there.
Yeah, I went to a buffet once and got my food and went around, and then I found the seafood section, and that section had an extra upcharge to go into. And my immediate, visceral, and still to this day response was, "Oh, fuck this buffet. Fuck it right in its face." Because
Drew burnt that place to the ground.
Yeah, it's there's just something about if someone says all right, this is the fee and it gets you everything, and then say, okay, we're adding stuff, but this costs more. It's like, oh, you motherfucker.
I do agree to a certain point because Great Adventure, which is New Jersey's biggest theme park, is not cheap to get into, and yet you get in there and there's 2 or 3 rides that are like, oh, well, this is an extra $5, and that just makes me want to just walk through the park with both middle fingers raised.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of unreasonable people, I suppose there's also the issue of piracy, because I know people who will pirate movies, and the only thing that delays them is waiting till there's a good version of it out. So they might go to the cinema simply because there's not a good version of the pirate out because the DVD hasn't hit whatever country is going to pirate it first. If this all comes out on pay-per-view, that means people are just going to get access. I mean, they're just going to instantly pirate it
100%.
as soon as it's released. Which means that whatever damage Hollywood takes from piracy now, be it a small amount or a large amount, it's got to just increase exponentially. Because they have no control.
For all the controls and all the piracy protection they put on there is no way to stop somebody from recording something once it is on a screen.
Yeah. That's just the trade-off.
Yeah. I mean, I've done it before. There's been people who say to me, oh, I've got the movie. Do you want to borrow it? So, yeah, I'll borrow the movie. It's not the same as stealing it. It's a movie I really want to see. And if I think it's been filmed in a cinema via a camcorder, I'm just not going to watch it. Not because of any inherent nobility, but because if I really want to watch a movie, I want to watch it in its purest intended form, so I enjoy it more. But like I said, it's just not going to be an issue. If everyone goes straight to streaming release with these blockbusters, that means day one piracy availability.
Well, I think that's why you won't see day one for anything that could be remotely described as a blockbuster. Let's harken back to that Universal AMC thing we opened up with. Let's note, as much as Universal loved that VOD Trolls thing, they didn't strike a deal to do day of releases. They still maintained a 17-day window, which is, I think, the first 3 weeks when movies traditionally make most of their money, except for the variances with the, after upticks or the critical receptions or awards or blah, blah, blah. But generally, a movie makes the money it's going to make in 3 weeks. The big money, I should say. And so now, and apparently the deal is it goes onto AMC's streaming service after that, which that's a whole kit and caboodle for another day. But I do get it. It's I understand why they're keeping the window there. And it's pretty much just for the reason Steve said. You might get some pirates to go and spend the money to see it.
I mean, perhaps this is a much bigger problem because I'm kind of with you, Drew. Releasing Black Widow, which has probably already been made, straight onto Disney streaming as an exclusive, to me seems like a boss move. That'll definitely have me, I'd probably extend my package for another couple of months at least. But because I forgot to unsubscribe after watching Black Widow, because that's how it works. But
I guess credit, they did just drop fucking Hamilton.
That's been around a while. But the fact that they haven't done it, I think, speaks fucking volumes of how integral this infrastructure was to their profit model.
Yeah, and they've got to be fucking hurting for some money because those theme parks have a shitload of overhead that is not being upkept with no people through the doors.
Yeah. I mean, all these movies we know were supposed to release early this year. They must be finished, or at least mostly finished, or, can be managed. So if it's a case of we got to get out there to make some money, I could understand that. They'd just be putting it out on streaming. Certainly what they're doing with all the smaller movies. But that's not what cinema's been about for a while now. All the smaller movies haven't really been hitting the mainstream theatre market. It is just kind of, we're at a stage where it's just blockbusters or sensationalist cheap horror movies that are kind of hitting the screens, and they're not releasing those. They're not just dropping them onto the channels that can make them some money, which tells me that the margin for failure here must be catastrophic.
Oh, I mean, I think personal, if not entire studios, because these are corporations run by human beings who have worked in a, let's just say, not notoriously savory industry up to a position of power. In a position, if you're running a studio, that's a lot of power, but it's also very famously easy to get your ass kicked out if you lose too much money. And you got to wonder how many of the decisions are being made from, oh, I have to save the studio versus, oh, I have to save my job.
Yeah.
Human component.
Yeah, that's true. It's not as if people are entirely reasonable when it comes to failure. There was a worldwide pandemic. I don't give a shit. Get out. You're fired.
One could argue, is this a good thing? If the pandemic is bringing to light and causing to crumble inherently not good systems, I mean, yes, it sucks that on the individual level, I don't want to see people suffer, but when you see just a corrupt system kind of crumble to the dust, doesn't it make you feel a little bit better?
I mean, but I like movies, and I want there to be a system for movies. I don't want it to be shitty and abuse people by any means. God fucking no. But, it would be a bummer for everything to burn to the ground entirely, which I don't think it will. I think that would be hyperbolic. But I don't know. I'm worried about theaters in the sense that I feel like there is a misbelief right now, and it goes to what Steve talked about of wanting to appeal to everybody. This movie has to go wide. It has to do good everywhere. There's such an inclination to make things more generic, be it a film, be it a movie, theater, a place to watch it. This conception of the broadest appeal is the greatest appeal. And in practice, and this is very anecdotal, but I find that the opposite is true. The more specificity applied, the more quality, enjoyment, connection people have to a brand and an experience. The movie theater Steve and I talked about, where I Pick and Alamo, both which are very specific in what they try to do and cultivate. Movies that, we tend to like and keep talking about are not necessarily good ones. I haven't talked about Endgame in over a year. I won't shut the fuck up about Miami Connection, which is absolutely insane. But it's so specific. I think there's just a misthought that generic is the broader appeal, and in some ways it is. But these days, I truly feel like being specific is your greater strength.
You're not wrong. I mean,
I think there's a big parallel there with the self-publishing revolution with books.
100%.
I never would have made it as a traditionally published author, but I've got a career. I'm putting food on the table with D&D fart jokes.
And I mean,
oh yeah. This is very much applicable to all art. Yeah, it's.
Would anybody have given a shit if Deadpool had been PG-13?
Not for a heartbeat.
I think of it like radio. When I was growing up in Britain, you pretty much had Radio 1, and it played the generic fucking hit factory. But then you'd have smaller shows on it that did all the indie stuff that were actually interesting and you wanted to listen to. But those things couldn't have survived without the generic hit factory. I'm thinking maybe the days of a 10-movie Marvel run ending in Endgame are probably over. I don't think it will happen at that scale or that level of success again after this. How that knocks on to how they adapt, what it means for smaller, quicker, easier to pivot projects. I don't think it necessarily means success, but I would hope it would.
Oh man, Steve, yeah, you bring up a really good big point in that for the last 10 years, Disney, I mean Marvel in a more over sense, but mostly just Disney, has been the juggernaut, the engine that is driving the summer blockbuster. Since basically Iron Man, etc. There's a few who've slipped in here and there, but they've owned house between Star Wars and Marvel and etc. And this sort of break in movie theater going is happening right on the heels of them wrapping the Star Wars trilogy, which that one that one had its own issues going in, but also the Marvel Phase 1. So at the ending Phase 1 was already going to be kind of a period where they risked things cooling off and people migrating away from the story and the brand. You cannot imagine that an extra year of space between all of that is going to help them revitalize it.
No. I mean, I'm a Marvel fanboy and I really loved the movies, but after Endgame, even watching the next Spider-Man movie, it was great, but I was still at the time kind of the opinion is like, oh yeah, I like the look of Multiverse of Madness. I like the look of all these things. Would I be terribly upset if I never saw them? Maybe not. I think I got enough kind of Marvel into my veins to last me. And now that the coronavirus is kind of putting these things off, I am finding that, it's perhaps not the end of the world. So I don't know how many other people are feeling like that.
Oh, that is a good point. Like, I cut the cord, like, for cable and stuff just not too long ago. Like, when this stuff was already started, but it's amazing how quickly I completely there's some shows I meant to watch on their websites and stuff, and it's amazing how quickly I just completely blew that off.
Yeah. At the end of the day, they were selling as a dream. All this theater stuff and these grand palaces where we go to see these ridiculous kind of pop culture things. We just we bought into it because of a massive momentum and PR machine. And now that it's been taken away, are people really missing it?
I mean, there was absolutely a time when theaters were a unique experience. Like, up until I would say my 20s, it was not possible to replicate that without being a rich motherfucker, a cocaine statue having motherfucker. So I definitely do think that that's part of it. Is just this is making people realize how little the difference might have become.
Yeah, I don't think movies there was always going to be interesting. I mean, the idea of the blockbuster, like Jaws, I think was the original blockbuster, a throwaway little project. Nobody thought that was going to be what it was. Even Star Wars, nobody thought that was going to be. Movies and creators and artists will always be able to pivot. They'll be able to survive without tremendous rock star budgets. And we'll still get great stories told well. In fact, there may be an innovation, a revolution in filmmaking. But I don't think it will be in the cinema. And I think the days of the rock star movie and the godlike celebrities might be coming to an end of it.
So this is interesting. I was going to kind of broach this. Should we talk about the fact that it might be good in some ways, and not just the corruption that's getting rooted out, as Rick addressed earlier, but the fact that with Disney buying up so many properties and so much consolidation, part of the problem with these too big to fail blockbusters is also that we are getting very close to being back in the studio system that dominated movies in the 50s and 60s. And that sucks. And that's part of why we're seeing less creativity, why we're seeing just these big ass tent poles. And if anybody remembers how that goes, they suddenly started, Too Big to Fail, all these movies that are they'll definitely make all these hundreds of millions of dollars back, or whatever the old timey version was. And then they fucking didn't. And shit started collapsing. But that's also what led to the rise of independent, smaller creators getting the ability to get screen time, because people weren't wanting to spend all this money on these huge risks anymore. So I mean, Is it entirely bad if this forces some fresh competition into the old experience?
Well, for the uninitiated, don't know what the studio system was. It's the thing that killed Judy Garland, but it's also the thing that gave us The Wizard of Oz. It was this incredible conglomeration of 3 big studios who basically owned everything. They owned the theaters, they owned the production, they owned the cameras, they owned the directors, they owned the actors, they owned everything. And they were able to churn out movies at an incredible rate, just this incredible industrious rate and huge, never before seen. It's what made Hollywood as we know it. But, it killed people. It was exploitative. It was corrupt. It was too much power. And I think maybe Disney buying the fuck out of everything is probably the closest we've got to that era. So, yeah, I don't know. It was definitely heading in that direction where somebody may as well have just been owned by Disney.
How many Chris's does Disney own?
And, but you're right. So is it a good thing? I wouldn't say for as flawed and immoral as the system was, some of the greatest movies of all time got made under the studio system. And I think Disney has given us a kind of boost to innovation and technology and distribution that wouldn't have been done without that kind of overreach. But do we need it? Is it perhaps better if it's not there?
I mean, maybe it's things in cycles.
We're getting like dangerously close to like Tom Cotton territory. It's like, without slavery, we wouldn't have Citizen Kane.
Yeah, notice nobody else backed up Steve on his, yeah, but the movies were great bit. We left you out to dry on that one, buddy.
I mean, they might have drowned 100 extras on Ben-Hur or whatever it was, but really good fucking movie.
The opinions of Steve Wetherell do not represent the authors.
I'm talking about evolution, and evolution is by design not pretty.
Yeah, that was the bit we talked about before the episode opened, is that theaters and maybe blockbusters as a whole have to evolve or die, because I don't think the system as it stands is going to be sustainable anymore.
No.
The days of Endgame, $1 billion, massive opening weekends, they're just gone for a while. They're just not gonna, people aren't gonna be comfortable.
If they're scared of releasing Mulan onto streaming, then they cannot survive without the system we had. And we're not getting that back till next year, if at all.
It is kind of interesting that they're choosing no money at all versus experimenting.
Yeah.
Well, again, though, they are experimenting. They pushed Hamilton onto it, and that is not a nothing enterprise. I know, haha, musicals, but a shitload of people wanted to see that. That was ticket money.
Yeah, now that they've destroyed the exclusivity of that, they've kind of probably shot themselves in the foot a little bit. But to me, that would be more a case of, well, this has been running successfully for 10 years with this exclusivity, and we need something.
Well, no, the movie of that was already coming out this year. That was designed to be a theatrical release, and that is one that Disney pulled and put on Disney Plus. Exactly what we were saying they should do with Black Widow.
I sure as shit wouldn't have paid to see it. Also, consider this. Hamilton is not like Cats. It's not like they specifically made the movie and digitized people into colonial costumes or so. How much money did it really cost to just record a theatrical performance?
Right, but my point is less that is more or less a commentary on the quality of the Hamilton production, which I actually liked a lot. But the more than Disney is making moves to test the waters in streaming. Very clearly, that was a movie that could have made money in theaters because it had a huge draw, and they push it onto the service. And probably, yeah, it got picked for that because it has that existing fan base, because it's more of a safer bet. But they are making bets. That was the point I wanted to draw.
It's a safe bet, though.
But it's a bet.
It is, but they lose points for it's kind of like, it's like, hey, are the 49ers going to beat this high school football team?
I'm not saying Disney's trying to be hip and with it. I'm saying that Disney understands they need some fucking money, and I think they are starting to look at other avenues.
But, firing your American president movie that I don't care about, the King George movie that you guys like, is it's something they had in the chamber, like they had Mulan in the chamber. I think it would have been significantly cheaper to produce than a non-stage based movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't know, the fact that they fired on that and didn't fire on Mulan when everyone's in a lockdown and at home, and they want everyone to go to Disney and buy their movie and get money. The fact that they haven't done that, to me, is I would consider that to be quite frightening. The idea that it's worth it to them to hold out for a theatre release that may or may not happen suggests to me that if this doesn't make a certain amount of money, it will fail, and they don't believe they can make that money by releasing it digitally.
No, I think that's very, very reasonable.
It's reasonable, but I think it's a huge gamble because again, when do we think theaters are going to open and people are going to say, screw it, I need to be there in a packed theater to see this movie?
I meant Steve is reasonable. Disney's fucked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think, I'm a guy sitting in his room in his underpants at the moment. But it's just seemed to me like if you had a bunch of rich quality content and you needed some money, you'd sell that shit. And the fact that they don't, to me, is like a big sign saying doom.
See, I'm on the same boat, but I think they are selling off their, I don't know, maybe their car with Hamilton rather than their house with Mulan, because they're trying to stay afloat.
It's what it feels like. They don't have enough faith in the digital market to do that. Because they should be like, hey, we're Disney. We're made of money. We own everything, remember? Here's Mulan. We can just pull these classic stories out of our asses whenever we want. But they're not.
Which is kind of
weird.
I bet
they wish they still had the vault system for now. It's like, hey, we're releasing some Blu-rays, assholes.
You know what's weird about that, though, if you think about it? Like, think of like the high quality stuff Disney has released to Disney Plus. I mean, The Mandalorian is not going to be a cheap show to produce.
Well, that's part of why they have their End Games and Black Widows is to absorb the cost of other projects.
Yeah. I don't think The Mandalorian was made with them thinking, we're going to do something for streaming that will be paid for by streaming. That was definitely like, we're Disney, we got backup money. We can come onto the streaming scene with our dicks out with the Mandalorian. And that would have absolutely been a safe bet had it not been for a sudden unprecedented global pandemic.
I think it's pretty safe to bet that Disney is planning to run that streaming service at a loss for a while, just based on the economics of breaking into that market and the cost of everything they've done.
Yeah. Which,
again, made a lot more sense pre-pandemic when they had theme parks and juggernaut movies and oh man. So theaters.
Yeah. I'm not optimistic about theaters. I'm not optimistic about mainstream theaters, that infrastructure, anyone relying on it anymore, which means if Disney don't think they can get the money to back them up purely through streaming, then a type of movie we've become very familiar with as a summer blockbuster is dead.
And when that goes, that's going to probably take out at least a major theater chain, if not a few, if not the majority. I think the specific ones have a shot. I think the ones we've talked about, the cater to a very, niche market and have their own experience, they've got to run. But if the blockbuster dies, I mean, AMC was already on their last legs.
Yeah. And I'm going to argue this is not necessarily a bad thing. Again, on the individual level, I don't like to see people suffer. But on the macro level, business is like nature. It abhors a vacuum. So this whole bullshit about, we need to bail out this company or this industry is crap. Because when something big fails, something else will rise up to take its place. And I have no doubt in this case that will be, I don't know what it will be. Maybe it'll be like Backyard Studios releasing to YouTube or so. But this will change, but I'm not going to decry it as necessarily a bad thing.
I've got a fun question, kind of on topic. All right, so the theaters just fucking fail. Everything goes to shit. What do we do with that real estate?
I mean, that just gets into the how many other businesses are fucked by this routine thing being broken.
Well, no, but I mean, movie theaters in particular. It's already built, and there are tons of them. What can you do with those?
Live porn.
Well, I'm thinking epic laser tag.
All the post-apocalyptic gangs are going to need layers. So I reckon gang layers for people wearing motorcycle tires as shoulder pads. It's my first bet.
Really weird sloped condos.
This would be fucking huge.
For people who are sick of straight floors. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's a different conversation about what kind of large enterprises are going to be around.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be concert halls.
Exactly.
Yeah, this might be a great time for like small venues. Packed auditoriums, not so much.
Yeah.
Rewild that sucker. Let the animals have it. But
all right, zoos.
Just the middle of a downtown area, and then the Wolf Theater.
Yeah, they make like the prequel to The Last of Us, and it's just AMC theaters failing, and that's the end of civilization.
You know what? I'm going to pick up on Rick's point about nature being abhorring a vacuum. Creativity's not going to die. People are always going to make movies. People are always going to make art. I'm just going to remind you about the example movie we were talking about, Disney's Ace in the Hole, was Mulan, a remake of a story that's already been very adequately told by the same studio in our lifetimes. And it's like, that was it. That was their Ace in the Hole for this year.
And this is like the fifth or sixth remake of one of their properties they've done, too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, maybe that was hubris. Maybe that was treating us like idiots. Maybe they should have had the decency to write a fucking script. And then maybe they wouldn't have had to throw millions at effects and making all these huge polished choices that are going to make sure it's going to be accessible to every corner of the planet. Because maybe they should have just put all that into telling a new and interesting story. And then going to streaming might not be such a bank breaker.
Yeah. Fuck you, Disney. This is what you get for gentrifying the world.
We talked about the collapse of the studio system earlier, but when it went down, it wasn't like movies died. Again, that was when we started seeing the rise of a lot more smaller movies, maybe the first seeds of real independent theaters, and you didn't have as much of a human suffering component, Steve.
I wasn't saying suffering is necessary. It's just, Disney stands on a mountain of blood and bones.
So it's certainly not like creativity fell away. It got a shot in the arm because that was what it needed, was more room for smaller tales and voices and everything, because the industry had grown bloated. And yeah, I think there's definitely a level of that at play here.
Blockbuster died. We're all still here.
Well, put it this way: the movie that was making noise for me was something that was just the one I heard people talk about and be excited about was a little movie called The Rental, which was just on Amazon, dropped with very little fanfare. It's got Alison Brie. It was just a comparatively low budget horror with tight writing. Bit of a disappointing ending. I won't spoil it for people, but it was just fine. You know, it didn't insult my intelligence. It wasn't some kind of Blumhouse Jack in the Box horror. It was something that somebody had written and paid a bit of attention to and put a bit of love into, and people were kind of talking about it. And maybe that's the start. Maybe from now on, that's what we're going to get. Interesting movies that get people talking about it without having some huge trailer and, oh my God, do you remember this movie behind it? We will get an uptick in good movies, but they won't be in theaters, and they won't be anything like the massive budget blockbusters we've enjoyed over the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the rise of small cinema again. That's where my money sits. And it's going to be...
So we're not going to get Twister?
We already got Twister.
Have they not remade Twister yet?
Honestly, that is surprising.
There was a low-budget version of that with Bruce Campbell called Tornado.
Oh, that sounds like great Authors and Dragons at the movies fair.
I wouldn't mind doing Twister.
Asylum Pictures is rubbing their hands right now going, now is our time.
Somebody just pointing a hairdryer at Bruce Campbell for 90 minutes. And
Oh. Well, I think that probably wraps it up on the theater discussion. We didn't necessarily end on the most optimistic notes, but the situation is what it is.
It's 2020.
Yeah. At least we're hopeful for the for the future of the arts, if not necessarily the industry supporting it currently.
we'll see you in the murder drones that used to be theaters. The wolf-studded murder drones.
It's as good of a guess as any. That or porno stores. I mean, when in doubt, always bet on the big three. Food, sex, and drugs, they always sell.
Now's the time. Invest in Thunderdome.
Sounds some kind of hamburger in the shape of a woman. There's got to be a way to make money out of this.
Well, while we figure out our business plan, we'll come back to you next time with a regular episode of Authors and Dragons. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Bye.